Hi everyone, how we doing? We streaming? Looks like we are. I'm never entirely sure, but I hope things are running properly. Looks like the sound levels are on. It looks like the camera is right. Let's jump right in. Uh, late last night, there was some breaking news from Bloomberg that Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto exchange FTX is exploring whether it might be able to acquire online brokerage Robinhood. Now, if you'll recall, Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX and of Alameda Research recently extended a huge line of credit, hundreds of millions of dollars, to both Voyager and BlockFi, ostensibly to stem the contagion of falling institutions in the wake of the crypto. What are we calling this? What are we calling this? The dominoes falling down, starting with UST and Luna, and then Celsius and Three Arrows Capital, and now it's extending to these other institutions. A lot of people have looked at Sam Bankman-Fried as kind of the savior in this space, helping people, relieving these institutions of, their debts that they can't service. I don't trust Sam Bankman-Fried. The guy came out of nowhere. Within 3 years, became one of the richest people on the planet, and is now starting to dominate a space that was supposed to be a rebellion against legacy institutions and would-be central planners. Institutions and central planners with whom he's very friendly, very buddy-buddy. Now, back to the present headline. Sam Bankman-Fried supposedly looking to acquire Robinhood. FTX is deliberating internally how to buy the app-based brokerage. Someone with knowledge of the matter said Robinhood hasn't received a formal takeover approach from FTX, another person said. So Robinhood has not received a formal offer from FTX. And in fact, Sam Bankman-Fried is saying we haven't made any formal merger or acquisition offers. Okay, fine. There are people who are running this headline as they're looking to acquire Robinhood, and then there was something of correction and update, and people are saying that Bloomberg got this wrong, that FTX is not trying to acquire Robinhood. Okay, the fact that they haven't made a formal offer doesn't mean they weren't very seriously considering it internally and trying to figure out if it was even possible. How would we do this logistically? You're not going to come make an offer unless you can figure out logistically how you would do it. You're going to consider it extensively internally before you make a formal offer. So the fact that they haven't made a formal offer does not negate the possibility that they've already been discussing this extensively internally. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Sam Bankman-Fried was trying to bring Robinhood into his fold, right? The guy has FTX, which is the number 2 exchange in the United States right now, distant behind Binance, actually. Binance, I'm going to get my numbers wrong. I don't know if that's Binance is the number 1 in the world and the US, or just in the world and not necessarily in the US. Regardless, Binance is huge. Binance does incredible volume, but FTX is behind that. And now Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX, of Alameda Research, has basically gotten a fire sale where he might have a controlling interest in BlockFi and Voyager. And now it's looking like he's going after Robinhood. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he was going after Robinhood. He's bringing kind of the r/Wall Street Bets degens into his control. Man, I don't trust Sam Bankman-Fried. I really don't. The greatest threat to all of this entire cryptocurrency experiment, and the Bitcoiners understand this more than anybody, the greatest threat is centralization. You can take a decentralized protocol, a decentralized cryptocurrency, and centralize it in such a way that you control it. What makes it uncontrolled, what makes it ungovernable, what makes it permissionless is that it's decentralized, is that no singular institution or entity can control the network or your coins if you hold them in private custody, personal custody, self-custody, self-sovereign custody. If everything is on exchanges, and if the exchanges are controlled primarily by not just one company, but really one guy, that is bad freaking news, people. That is bad news. I'll say it again. I do not trust Sam Bankman-Fried. Sorry. This probably means I'm never going to get an FTX sponsorship. Oops. Yeah, and just let's repeat the message if you haven't heard it already. Get your coins off exchanges. Coinbase sinks as Goldman downgrades to sell after 75% rout. I don't know what that means. Coinbase Global is continuing to struggle due to continued downdraft in crypto prices and the resulting fall in industry activity levels, according to a research note from Goldman Sachs. So volume is down. These exchanges make their money on volume. And frankly, based on the way they behave, especially Coinbase, they don't really care what you're trading. They'll list every horrible garbage cryptocurrency out there. As long as you're trading it, they're making money. But now that the entire market is down and so many of these altcoins are basically looking like they're going to go extinct, Coinbase's volume is down and they are hurting bad for revenues. I think Coinbase is probably going to survive. It's just got so many users that I think people will figure out a way to probably survive. I don't think it's at risk of not surviving. I've had people actually text me asking me that, like, is Coinbase going to go down like Celsius went down? I think it's highly unlikely. This contagion would have to be all-encompassing to get Coinbase, to knock down Coinbase. That would be bad news. But continuing, Voyager has lowered their withdrawal amount, their limits. So it used to be that you could withdraw, I believe, tens of thousands. So I've said on this channel before that 2 months ago, I had money on Celsius Network, and then I withdrew about 3 weeks before they shut off withdrawals. I also had money on Voyager. I also had money on BlockFi. I used all of these services. And only a couple months ago did I finally listen to the advice of so many Bitcoin maximalists telling me, get your coins off exchanges. I finally did it. And I'm so glad that I did, because otherwise I would be truly screwed. Truly would have lost more than I can afford to lose in the Celsius shutoff. But I also had money on Voyager. And I remember when I withdrew my money, there were limits, but they weren't incredibly restrictive. Now they are much lower. So if you have a large sum of money that you want to withdraw from Voyager, you're going to have to do it over many days because you can only get a little bit out at a time. They got a line of credit from FTX for hundreds of millions of dollars. So did BlockFi. And in fact, here's a thing, personal experience with BlockFi. Recently, like the same day that BlockFi, that the news came out that BlockFi was getting a line of credit from FTX or Alameda, from Alameda Research, both Sam Bankman-Fried. In my mind, they're the same thing, even though I know legally they are not. The same day that that news came out, I got a phone call from a number that I don't recognize. I never answer calls from numbers that I don't recognize, but for whatever reason, stupidly, I picked this up. I thought maybe it was my mechanic. Picked it up, and who was it? It was BlockFi, or so they said, saying, Mr. Craig, so glad to talk to you. You have used our services in the past for crypto lending and borrowing. Would you be interested in continuing some of that activity? Now, I haven't done anything on there in a long time. The last thing I did was withdraw any of my money a couple months ago, and I hadn't been borrowing from them in much longer than that. So here they are calling me over the phone, identifying themselves as BlockFi, and wanting me to discuss the personal details and my plans for my cryptocurrency portfolio with them over the phone. There's so many things wrong with this. One, they're doing this because they don't have deposits, right? They're low on liquidity and they need people to deposit so they have money to work with. Two, you should not be encouraging customers to discuss their personal financial details over the phone just because you told them that you were BlockFi. Guys, people can get your phone number. I could call you and tell you that I'm the president of the United States. You shouldn't discuss your plans with me. You shouldn't discuss your personal financial details just because somebody tells you that they're a financial institution. Hang up on those people. I quickly ended that call. I should have been more abrupt than I was. I politely ended it. I should have impolitely ended it. And I should have told them, don't encourage your customers to do what you're doing right now. Don't tell them to discuss their personal financial details over the phone with anybody who identifies themselves as BlockFi. There's no way to do identity verification over the phone. If you'll recall, a while ago, there was a guy who lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because his wallet got sweeped of NFTs. He had a bunch of high-ticket NFTs because somebody called him claiming to be Apple. And his caller ID said it was Apple, and he just believed him. Oh, guys, Be a little more paranoid than them. Turns out that there are thieves out there. There are people trying to scam you. You should be skeptical. You should be dubious of anybody wanting to talk about your personal portfolio. Anyway, this tab right here that I have not addressed at all. This is Voyager FUD. This is r/invest Voyager, people freaking out. Has anyone not received their US dollar withdrawals within the past 10 business days? And then there was another post of, for the love, can somebody please sticky thread about withdrawal times? Everybody's freaking out. Just not because there's been concrete problems, but because there's a lot of FUD. They got this credit line from Alameda Research. They lowered their withdrawal limits. People are freaking out about the solvency of Voyager, and BlockFi for that matter. This is not me saying that those institutions are going to go down. It is me saying that you don't know. I don't know. We were all pretty surprised by Celsius. Most of us were. There were people who predicted it. Corey from Swan Bitcoin basically predicted it. Trader University, another YouTube channel, guy who's very much a Bitcoin maximalist, he basically predicted it. You know, these maximalists, guys, they just keep getting it right. Keep being right, even if I don't like their tone, even if I don't agree with their logic sometimes, even if I align only 90%, they end up being more or less correct. So self-custody is important, but self-custody alone is not the solution. FBI arrests 2 men planning violent robbery of Bitcoin worth millions of dollars, and they face 20 years in prison. You should do self-custody, but you need to do it the right way. You need to do it securely. You need to do it in a fashion where somebody with a $5 wrench can't come and hit you over the head and say, give me all of your Bitcoin. You need to do self-custody, but you need to educate yourself. And I feel silly saying this. Like, the answer to so many of the problems in the space are not necessarily better tools, better custodians, etc. It really is people need to get educated. There's not really a shortcut here. You have to educate yourself on how this stuff works, or you're not going to be able to hold your own keys securely in a way that nobody else can get to. If you're not educated yourself, then you basically have to trust other people. So spend some time with it. Spend some time understanding self-custody and the secure way to do that. What I would suggest, and what I probably need to do a video on, is multi-signature hardware wallets and how to set that up so that if somebody comes to you and puts a gun to your head and says, give me all of your crypto from your hardware wallet, you can honestly answer them like, I literally can't. There are multiple hardware wallets and they're not all here. You would have to go hold up 2 other places or 3 other places and get them all to cooperate at the same time. It would make it very, very logistically hard for somebody to actually rob you of your savings. And that's how you should be thinking of this stuff. Bitcoin, dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin, think of it as your savings account. This is not a quick flip. This is not a get rich quick. It is your savings account. It is meant to last years, decades, lifetimes. Okay? Moving on. Stop using Robinhood. Agreed. This is a person who said, I've seen other people online explain why not to use Robinhood for investing. Now I know why. And they only know why now because they had a sour experience. You should really, really start learning from the experience of others. Look for other people who have had sour experiences with these institutions and try to gauge whether that institution is really a friend of the depositor. I will tell you that Coinbase is not. Coinbase is not. Robinhood is not. They have demonstrated over and over and over that they will protect their bottom line before they will protect their customer. They often don't even have the resources to help the customers in a meaningful way. If they can address your problem, it will be long, long after the fact and probably not a full reversal of the problem. Sorry, those are our present realities. You're lucky to get an actual customer support human being to help you with this stuff. Again, you just have to educate yourself. It's really, really, really hard to find somebody who knows what they're doing and is willing and capable to handhold you through this. So you got to spend some time educating yourself so you don't need your hand held. Yeah, sorry, team. That is the reality. That's the hard reality. CNBC is bipolar. This person posted their notifications. S&P falls as stocks struggle to maintain their comeback from bear market lows. S&P 500 rises as stocks look to extend their rally from bear market lows. This is typical, right? You can find this kind of stuff all over the place. You can find the same outlet, the same media entity that will contradict itself happily. Major media entities do this. Politicians absolutely do this. These are groups that you should, by default, be skeptical of. It's weird, you know. I tend to trust the curated feeds that I have on Reddit and Twitter a great deal more than I trust the legacy institutions and authorities. Authority in the broad sense, not legal. I trust those a lot more than I trust decentralized networks. I trust loose confederacies. Again, there's a word that I probably shouldn't be using. A loose community online a lot more than I trust these institutions. That just wasn't always the case. It used to be that you really could trust, or at least most people believed they could trust, the media, Washington, D.C. Maybe they were kidding themselves. Maybe they're totally wrong about that all along, and these groups have been lying to people all along, but now it's pretty difficult to hide those facts. They contradict themselves, as demonstrated here. Cathie Wood says the U.S. is already in a recession. If you're not familiar with Cathie Wood, she's the CEO of ARK Invest. And Cathie Wood is saying we are already in a recession. Again, these institutions, the federal government, the Federal Reserve, they have not said. In fact, the Biden administration has adamantly denied that we're in a recession. Well, they kind of have to. Motivated cognition. We've talked about this before. They don't benefit from being honest here because then they'll get the blame. So they try to spin it, but they can only spin something so much, right? Think back to 2008. Do you remember 2008? There was a presidential election going on, and there was a candidate by the name of Ron Paul. And Ron Paul, from the stage, I believe in one of the debates, said, "We are already in a recession. Main Street America already knows it." And he was right, but people laughed at him. They said he was a crazy, kooky old man. Old? Yes. Crazy? No. He was dead on. I challenge you, actually, go back and search for some 2008 Ron Paul videos from when he was running for president and watch and tell me if he was not spot on about the big picture on all of these things. Ron Paul wrote a book called End the Fed because of the perverse incentives and mechanics of the Federal Reserve, which now is a front and center issue. We're all paying attention to the Federal Reserve. That was not the case when he was running for president in 2007. Now it is. Ron Paul wasn't crazy. He was way ahead of his time. Okay, back to the tab at hand. Cathie Wood is saying we're already in a recession. One thing that she said is that inventories are an indicator here. We think we are in a recession, Wood said on CNBC's Squawk Box Tuesday. We think a big problem out there is inventories, the increase of which I've never seen this large in my career. I've been around for 45 years. Inventories, what does she mean? Well, stores, retail, inventory everywhere, they've got too much stuff on the books. Inventory versus sales. Walmart, way more inventory than sales. Amazon, way more inventory than sales. Home Depot, where's Target? Target is insane. Way more inventory than sales. They've stocked up on all of these supplies and people are not buying them. It's not selling. So consumer behavior has changed, and maybe because of the supply chain issues, but I'm sure a lot of these places wanted to stock up because they weren't sure if they were actually going to have inventory. Not having inventory is bad. It's really bad. Having too much inventory, arguably worse. I've experienced this myself. Early in my career, I worked at a place called Orabrush. I was their spokesman and on the media and marketing team. But we sold a tongue cleaner of all things. And guess what? That company lagged for a couple whole years because we made a huge purchase of tongue cleaners that sat in a warehouse and we couldn't move them fast enough. We couldn't get them out the door. All of our capital was locked up in this giant $1 million pile of tongue cleaners. Another close acquaintance of mine, it basically ended their business. They invented a product, they started selling it, it got into major retail, they got on national TV, things were going great. They placed a huge order for product, and then one of their purchase orders didn't go through. One of the retailers backed out who was going to buy the bulk of this stuff. Suddenly, they have a warehouse full of product, no cash flow, no cash to work with. They ended up fire selling their whole business. Too much inventory is a problem. It's a problem for the producer and seller of a product. It's a problem for retailers. We're seeing it here. Way too much inventory, not enough throughput on sales. This is a leading indicator that we are already in a recession. What does that mean for you? Well, probably means hold on to some cash. Probably means put some money into Bitcoin for long-term savings. Probably means get some staples in place. Price of food is going up. Inflation is not transitory. Things look grim. Things look bad. I'm sorry to say. Team, I gotta go. Let me know down in the comments what you want to talk about in the future. We will address it in a coming video.